So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Insider Home Buying Tips from a Realtor and Lawyer. My name is Judy Fang. I'm a staff lawyer at the Centre for Public Legal Education, Alberta, or CPLE for short. I will introduce our panelists in a few moments, but we'll go through some introductory remarks first. So first, I'd like to acknowledge the land in which we sit. The Centre for Public Legal Education respectfully acknowledges that we are located across Treaty 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10 territories and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. So as a quick disclaimer, as always, this presentation contains legal information and is not intended to be legal advice. So if you're looking for legal advice, you're going to have to hire a lawyer. I would also like to recognize our funders that make webinars like today possible. So CPLE receives funding from the Alberta Law Foundation, the Department of Justice Canada, and the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. And a few other items before moving on. Number one, we will not be circulating today's presentation slides. However, we are recording this webinar, which will be available on our YouTube channel. And we will save time for questions at the end. But we do ask that you post your questions in the Q&A box on your screen so we could answer them later. And when you leave today's webinar, you will be prompted to complete a short survey. Really appreciate you taking the time to let us know how we did and what other topics you would like to learn more about. So very quickly here, what is CPLE? For those who may or may not be familiar with us, we're a nonprofit organization serving all of Alberta. We provide legal information and education through our various booklets, tip sheets, videos, webinars, websites, and more. And our goal is to make the law available and understandable for Albertans. So to learn more about us, you can refer to our website, cple.ca. So without further ado here, I am very pleased today to introduce our two panelists on the webinar, David Fraser, Realtor with Royal LePage Premier Real Estate, and Sherry Simons, a lawyer at Whitten LLP. We're very privileged to have them join us over the noon hour today and have them share their insights with us. So first up, David Fraser is a proud Edmontonian. He grew up on the north side of Edmonton, lived on White Avenue as he attended the U of A, and now is in his 7th year of real estate, now happily residing in the west end of Edmonton. Next up, we have Sherry Simons, who has over 10 years of legal experience and works mainly on real estate, wills and estates, and corporate commercial matters. She is a regular presenter at real estate and estate planning workshops and has several published articles regarding those areas of law. So as we move on, we're ready for our panel discussion. So first question here, David, this one's for you. So what are the current market conditions in Alberta for buying a home right now?
Competitive. If I could say one word, it's competitive. I'm Edmonton born and raised, so I'm a little biased, but I just have a lot of promise for the city, for this province, and a lot of people are coming into this province hoping they can have a better lifestyle, more affordable. So we're seeing a lot of people coming in, and that's from overseas as well as Toronto, Vancouver, those kind of places, which is driving up the demand for houses. And unfortunately, at the same time, we're seeing decrease in home inventory. That's homes on the market available for sale. Some people are very hesitant. How can I sell my house if I can't move anything to move into anything? And even with the higher than normal interest rates that we're seeing, it's very competitive where you're seeing homes that are well valued, sold in within a day, where you're getting multiple offer situations within a week. I'm in a couple right now, and it is what it is. All you can do is just navigate the waters as calmly as possible. But it is a little chaotic right now, and we're still seeing a little bit of the COVID iron itself out, and hopefully it will become normal again. Normal as in there's 5,500 homes on the market. When I started 7 years ago, there was 14,000 plus. So it's just a little more challenging now, but with the right program, right team, you can get there with a little extra patience than normal in previous years. That's it.
Yeah, thanks for that summary, David. Really insightful. You could definitely notice there's a lot more BC and Ontario plates on the road now. So that's it's good to know that they're all coming over here for more affordable homes. All right. So question number 2 here. So what are the key steps involved in the home buying process? We know that there are many people on this webinar today that may perhaps be first-time home buyers and may not be familiar with the process. And they might have some questions as well. Do they really need a realtor and or a lawyer to buy a home in Alberta? Especially if they're from maybe out of province, might have some of these questions as well. So I'd like to say, maybe David, do you want to tackle this first, and then we'll hear from Sherry on this?
Absolutely. And Sherry, I got your back. 100%, guys watching this webinar, you will need a lawyer. No matter what, you're going to need the lawyer for the closing costs, buying or selling. When it comes to buying a home, why not use a realtor? Because the commission, 9 times out of 10, unless agreed upon by a different program, 9 times out of 10, the realtor's commission comes from the selling side. So that realtor, he's going to have to open up the doors for you. He should be from the start to beginning. When your first initial handshake, sign the first paperwork, I'll be your guy. We'll be on the same team. He opens up the doors, buy key safe. You need a realtor with you in the homes to make sure you're not stealing anything. You've done your vetting process, what kind of buyers you have within that home at that time. And then he should help you, guide you along while you get other professionals, such as your lawyers, such as your mortgage brokers, your property inspector, your condo review lawyers as well. And then he should be, the steps. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So step 1, find out what you can afford comfortably. That way you don't want to break your heart if you're looking at something that's a little higher than you can afford. So get yourself pre-approved of what you can afford. You find the right home after that. You do your due diligence, which is your inspection, your finance, your condition stage. And then you kind of sleep on the big decision and pull the trigger. If you're not happy, start again. If you're happy, you proceed with the sale. And I answered some of the question 8, I think, so I apologize for that.
Sherry?
Okay, so I can step in and give my insight to this question. So I like to start with, do you need a lawyer to purchase a house? If you're financing, absolutely. Banks will only advance purchase funds to lawyers because there's other steps that lawyers do behind the scenes to make sure that the bank's money is being protected. If you're not financing and you're just going to pay cash, it's still 100% recommended. There's too many issues that could arise if you try to do a deal yourself. The risk is just not worth it, especially when you're dealing with that amount of money. And the good thing about lawyers is they will take steps to protect the buyer's interests. So there's tons of background searches we do on the property. We look at title, we'll look at tax searches. We can spot and provide assistance if there's complications that arise, like a holdback issue. We will work with you and your lender to make sure that you're meeting the lender's requirements, because depending on your lender, there could be additional things that they need in place before they advance funds. And also, as lawyers, we're professionals, so we have liability insurance. If we make a mistake, then there could be funds available if our mistake causes you harm. So we are professionally insured. Going back to the steps in the process, so the realtors are super helpful because they're the ones who help you find the property, and they negotiate the contract. So they're going to be looking out for your interests and what do you want, and what other things can we perhaps get to the seller from the seller. So they stick handle that. Once you've waived conditions, with your realtor, then your contract is final. And at that point, your main obligation is just to make funding arrangements to make sure that you're ready to pay on your possession date. So sometimes you'll hear possession date, sometimes you hear closing date or completion date. They all basically mean the same thing. So the steps, you just want to let your realtor and your lender know who you're using for your lawyer. And that's great because then we can coordinate as a team. So your realtor will send your purchase contract to your lawyer, and then your lender will also send to your lawyer your mortgage instructions. And then the law office, like I said, there's tons of background searching that we do to make sure everything looks fine. We'll try to spot issues. We'll prepare your mortgage paperwork for you. We'll let you know if there's any other funding requirements from your lawyer. So the common ones would be insurance, making sure the property is insured. Some lenders do require title insurance, so we help to arrange for that as well. We'll also let you know if there's any shortfall required from you. So that's just typically the last little bit of your purchase funds that need to come into the lawyer's office. If you're not getting financing, then you do need to make arrangements to send your purchase funds to your lawyer's office. And then roughly about 3 to 5 days before your possession date or closing date, you meet with your lawyer to sign up all your paperwork. So yeah, those would be the steps.
All right, very good overview of the steps. And David, did you have something to add?
Just nice little booklets, because that's a lot of information. And Sherry, that was bang on. I write everything down. So if you're a client of mine, you want to know the steps, we got nice little booklets to follow, because it's a big thing. Get yourself a good team. Sorry, go ahead, Judy.
No, exactly. And I know what I'm hearing from the both of you, it could be a quite complicated process and many steps involved, documents involved, legal requirements, of course. But also, like, one thing to keep in mind is it's going to be the biggest purchase that many people will make in their lives, right? So get your professional team in order. All right, so next question here. Number 3. So what are the potential risks or pitfalls to watch out for when buying a home for the very first time? So David, do you want to tackle this first?
Sure, and great segue, Judy. There are dozens, if not thousands, of things that potentially could go wrong. The home buying process is complicated. It is your biggest purchase, but it doesn't have to be complicated if you're following the steps and you have the right team to get you along the way. Potential risks, biggest thing, buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse, you jumped the gun, you got into something, you're a little over water, you over purchased, you woke up in the morning, you're just like, shucks, what did I do? What did I do? And to solve that, you want to sleep on your big decisions. You want to take the step-by-step balances and checks. Also your temperature checks. Hey guys, we're at this stage. You feel comfortable moving to that stage? Okay, we're here. Are you ready to do this? At this point, you do forfeit your deposit. Okay, let's proceed. Sounds good. So other than emotionally, it's the property. And the property, you want to make sure you've done your due diligence and you're getting what you signed up for. There's no leave behinds. They took that freezer out that you didn't want out of the garage. We've had farm equipment left behind on acreages that we didn't want and had to end up selling, and it was broken. So what you can do is just take your time. Don't be rushed. In this market, it's kind of hard to say don't be rushed. I'm saying homes are sold in a day, but you can get to a point where you're like, hey, I'm ready to proceed to the next step. Okay, we're still here, ready to proceed. What are the risks for proceeding or not proceeding? And then for when it comes to the property itself, when the freezer scenario in the kitchen you didn't want, well, you do a 48, 72-hour walkthrough. And Sherry, you can talk on this, that you can ask your lawyer before possession date, before the funds are transferred, after that walkthrough where you have some red flags, some concerns, you say, hey, lawyer of ours on our team, can you hold back a certain amount of funds just to make sure the property's cleaned up, just to make sure, and then that discussion can happen as well. Just us realtors, we're supposed to be the tugboats to make this process smooth as possible. So when it gets a little shaky, we have solutions to kind of calm those waters. And with a good team such as Sherry, we should be able to get you there with very minimal hiccups.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, David. Sherry?
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's always potential risks or pitfalls and in any transaction. And of course, buying a house is, there's always risks, but when you have your professional team, they help to make sure that you manage those risks as best as you can. Like Dave said, yes, if there's conditions, like if the seller is supposed to do cleaning, for example, you can certainly, either negotiate that you'll do an inspection before closing. And even if that's not there, we can always make that request. Sometimes sellers are agreeable, but if you have a good realtor on your side, they can write those conditions into the contract so that they're binding. Other things, it's, from my perspective, when I'm assisting buyers, it's just, watch your closing date. You need to make sure that you're ready to go by closing date, which means having your funds into my office. And sometimes there can be delays. Smaller lenders typically have more paperwork, there's funding requirements, and a lot of them need much more advance notice before they can send funds. So there's always a possibility that your funds will be late. Not typically a large problem, but if your funds are late, then you're going to be paying late interest on a day-by-day basis. So delays with possession can happen. So just be aware that, it's not super common, but I do see it happen from time to time. So because of that delay, don't I typically say, let people know, don't be expecting to move in right on possession date, don't have utility hookups for that date. Just give yourself a day or two of buffer just to, you know, if things close on time, great, go check it out, enjoy the day. But try to give yourself a buffer if you can. You know, watch your closing date too. It's not great to have a possession date right before a holiday, just in case there's any delay, because that can just end up costing you more. So sometimes the middle of the week's better for closing dates. And yeah, just be aware that there will be typically always a shortfall requirement to pay before closing. So just make sure you're budgeting accordingly. And again, a lot of what I'm saying is just managing risks beforehand, and there's a lot of things you can do beforehand just to manage those kind of risks. But certainly sometimes unexpected things happen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. One of the other questions talks about other issues that can occur. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that summary there. So next question here, probably mostly for David to answer. Do I need a pre-approved mortgage before shopping for a home?
I appreciate the lead up questions because this is a loaded question. The yes and no. No, because nobody's going to really ask for it kind of off the hop, and it kind of gives you just a general idea. But a super yes if you want to be prepared. You know, luck favors the prepared. You get that pre-approval. You know what ballpark you're in to look for the home to be comfortable in. Again, you don't want to be house poor, and you know any $20,000 either way can really affect the price of a home. If you're shopping for something you just can't afford yet, like think about your first car. I had a Chevette, bought it for $200, sold it for $200. Your first home might not be what your mom's looked like, you know, so you get that pre-approval, you know what you comfortably afford, you shop within that, or else you might break your heart that you look at the Joneses and you're just like, oh, you can't afford that house, nor do you want to, because then you're just setting yourself up for hard times, you know. So get a pre-approval to know what you want. Absolutely do your due diligence. And especially in these times where homes are sold within a day, that you have sellers asking for your pre-approved letter, with the offer. So if you want to be prepared, you find that right home. Once you come across and you have a day to act, you got that pre-approval, you know you're prepared, you're vetted to the sellers, and it should provide a smoother process as we're talking about following the steps. So yes, 10 out of 10 recommend pre-approval.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, David.
You're welcome.
All right. So question more for Sherry. Can you explain to us what is title insurance and do I need it?
Yeah, so title insurance. So when you're purchasing a house, generally the seller's going to give you two options. Either they're going to have a real property report and proof of municipal compliance provided to you, or they'll give you a credit for title insurance. So the RPR is basically just like a land survey that outlines all the structures on your property. When that survey is done, it's submitted to the city or the municipality, and the municipality takes a look at it just to make sure there's no problems with the structures or encroachments. And I know that sounds like a lot. When you see a lawyer, we go over that step by step. If they're not providing that to you, then you get the title insurance. So the seller will give you credit for your cost to get a title insurance to protect you. So title insurance is a specific kind of insurance policy that applies to real estate purchases. So as a homeowner, it's like a homeowner policy. So it covers title defects. So title defects are things that are, there could be a lot of different title defects. So like if a registration's made on your title after purchase, title insurance could address something like that. So that'd be like if a builder's lien pops up, or a fraudulent mortgage, or like a loan you didn't approve, something to that effect. It could be if there's a lack of a permit for a structure on a property that you're not aware of, or if there's structures located on utility right-of-ways on your property that are causing issues. So title insurance helps to address those kind of things, as long as those defects were not known when you bought the property, and if you're kind of in a forced situation where you have to fix it. So yeah, typically the seller will pay for your cost of title insurance if they're not giving you that real property report with proof of compliance. And I am seeing that more sellers are offering title insurance a little bit more often, just because it's usually a quicker and easier process. There can be delays if you're dealing with the real property report and compliance. So even if the seller has provided you with the real property report and compliance, There still can be benefits to a title insurance policy as getting added protection for yourself. And really that would be kind of a buyer's decision at that point. But there can be additional protections you get, even if your compliance certificate is clear and it's showing no issues. Title insurance can still protect you against mortgage fraud that could occur in the future, or if there's kind of internal permit issues within your house that have to be fixed. But policies do vary, so you'd have to check the terms and conditions if you're interested in getting that additional coverage for yourself, depending on what your concerns are. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of title insurance.
Sure, and just like a clarifying question, Sherry, is title insurance something that you could arrange to get through your lawyer as your...
Yeah, so typically we will help purchasers arrange for title insurance. So sometimes lenders require it. They need a lender policy, and then we'll talk to you about adding on a buyer's policy. If the seller's offering it to you, then we help to arrange for getting your title insurance applied for and paid for through our office. So yeah, the lawyers help you with that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sherry. All right, next question here. So what are the common closing costs associated with buying a home, and who pays for them? David, do you want to tackle this first?
Sure, and I do have to watch what I say here, team, because I don't want to be held to a specific number. So these are just kind of general ballparks, guys, that you could kind of just be aware of. As the buying realtor, the commissions 9 times out of 10, unless otherwise agreed, does come from the selling side. So as a buyer, you ask the questions, but make sure, hey, buying realtor, no commission, right? Comes from the sellers. Yes. So don't worry about us. Put us to work. We like what we do for the most part. No realtors the same. The buyer's lawyer is one, and Sherry, I don't want to speak too much, but it's about $1,800 for that service. It's absolutely necessary. You know, you shop around for that because there are good brokers and not so good brokers. Everybody's trying to do the same job, but different quality does arise. Home insurance is another one. When you purchase, you want your home insurance. I'd remember mine is around $1,000 to $2,000 per year, just to be aware of. And then your property taxes as well. Depending on what side of June 30th you are, who already paid the property tax, you got to reimburse. And Sherry and the lawyers at the end will kind of rate that depending on the day, the time of year, and who's already paid for it. But it can be kind of determined what the property tax is, and then when the date that you're purchased to be prepared for that. So there's a couple there. It's nothing crazy if you're purchasing a $200,000, $300,000 home, but there definitely is a couple thousands of dollars here and there that could put you over the edge. So ask the questions for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just carrying on that. So as a buyer, you are responsible for hiring your own lawyer and paying their legal fees. So real estate fees do vary. I mean, there's usually a general range, but they do vary based on the lawyer, the purchase price, and depending if you're financing your deal or paying cash. So sometimes cash deals, there's less paperwork involved, so fees can be lower. So you do pay your legal fees, but part of the legal fees, there's also going to be GST and disbursements that are charged to you. So the disbursements are kind of the cost to administer your file and just complete your purchase. So that'll be like small things like printing, postage, courier fees to send your payment over to the seller's office. But it also includes things that we do as part of our due diligence. So background searches. So pulling a property tax certificate to make sure there's no arrears or surprises on there, doing title searches as well. You also have to, as the buyer, pay for your land title fees, and that makes up a large part of your disbursement. So the land titles office will charge fees to register the transfer of land in your name, and also to register your mortgage if you have a mortgage. So the fees are just kind of standard. They're set by land titles, and it's just based on the value of your purchase and your mortgage. Like Dave mentioned, there will be adjusted costs. So you do have to just make sure that you're budgeting for a little bit extra because there's always shortfall and adjusted costs that come into play. So we do have to, when we pull that property tax search, we will adjust taxes, the tax cost between the parties. So sometimes the buyer gets a credit, sometimes it goes to the seller. Other commonly adjusted fees would be condo fees for the month and HOA fees for the year. like Dave had mentioned earlier, Dave, I think you had mentioned, so the seller pays the real estate commission from sale proceeds. So as a buyer, like it's totally free to use a realtor to help you with your purchase. So the seller's lawyer will make sure the seller's realtor gets paid, and then the commission gets split with the buyer's realtor. So there's totally no out-of-pocket cost for you when it comes to using a realtor, which is a great service. So yeah, as a buyer, definitely get a realtor on your side to help you.
Right, thank you to the both of you for clarifying common closing costs. So as we move on here, next question. This is for you, Sherry. So are there any specific legal requirements or regulations I should be aware of when buying a home in Alberta?
Yeah, this is a good question, and it can get very technical, so I'll try to just keep it short and sweet. There's actually two legal requirements that I can let you all know about. So right now, there is a prohibition on the purchase of residential property by non-Canadians. So there's the act. This is a ban on foreign ownership of Canadian housing, and it's been scheduled up to January 1st of 2027. So it's possible the government could extend it further. We just have to kind of wait and see. So this applies to people that are generally buying property within a village, town, or a city. So basically, like a non-Canadian cannot purchase any land within, like I said, the village, town, or city. There are some exemptions that apply. So, you know, there are exemptions. So if you're a non-Canadian and you're getting a property due to a divorce, separation, or gift, or because of the death of a family member, there's exemptions that apply. So you just have to be careful. And if you have any questions, or if you're not sure if this prohibition would apply to you or not, it's best to get legal advice, because there are quite a few like technicalities and exemptions. If you don't abide by this, there are penalties that would apply. So you can be subject to fines up to $10,000, or there could be court-ordered sales of the property that you purchased. So you want to just be careful. So if you have any questions or doubts, just consult with a lawyer, of course. There's one other restriction within Alberta. We do have foreign ownership of land regulations as well. So this is a prohibition for persons who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents. They can't purchase land located outside of a city, town, or village if the property is greater than basically 20 acres. Of course, there's always exemptions that are allowed, and it can get kind of technical. So if you have any questions about that, again, just consult with a lawyer and you can get some legal advice.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Okay, moving on here. This is the question for David. So are there any government programs or incentives available for first-time home buyers in Alberta? If you could speak to perhaps what some of your existing clients might have tried to get in terms of programs or incentives for buying a home for the first time, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Another one I have to kind of watch my P's and Q's here to answer this, because I'm not a mortgage person. I'm just a sales guy to help you on your journey to real estate. But there are programs. There was an actual first-time home buyer incentive program that actually just canceled at the end of March of this year. I personally don't know anybody that used it. If you could save some money, great. I personally wouldn't want the government owning a little bit of my house if I didn't have to. But there are ones that are out there. Oh, it started in 2019 and it ended in March, the first-time home buyers incentive. There are a couple other ones that I did have to do my own research on, and that's the home buyers amounts. You might be able to get $1,500 back. GST for new houses rebates, home buyers plan that you can withdraw from your RSP without getting dinged too much, and a first home savings account up to 40 grand. So there are things out there. I'm not super qualified to ask that. That'd be for your mortgage person, but please ask the questions. There are programs out there for you. If it's for you, great. If you don't need them, just do your research. Do your research.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Really good. So moving on here. So, what are some potential issues home buyers have after closing? And I know this is almost like two questions rolled into one. When there are potential issues, where can they turn to for help about them. So maybe, I'll throw this one out to David first. What do you typically see as potential issues after closing?
There's just like there's thousands of questions that you can be asked during the transaction process. There are thousands of little issues, but big to you that can arise. I've personally had to clean up a whole basement full of cat poop just because there was a miscommunication with the cleaners and the sellers. Job to do, you get it done. Like I said, with the farm equipment left behind. So what you do for that, a freezer left in the garage that you didn't want. So what you do with that is the 48-hour walkthrough we kind of talked about, and I don't have to kind of reiterate, but do your walkthrough before. If there's any red flags that come up, you talk to your lawyer to save it before, because by the time the transaction closes, you might have one last phone call for that seller before you become a little blip off the radar, or they're now in Saskatchewan or whatnot. So you want to do your own due diligence, buyer beware, make sure you set up the processes, do your walkthrough. Any red flags that you're not comfortable with, then you put your security in place beforehand, not after. Because if you're going to find something with your condo docs, your roof's falling apart because you didn't do an inspection, you didn't get a lawyer to review your condo docs, that's just part of the process for skipping steps. Didn't know your house was caving in, should have got an inspection. Is there a big assessment coming down the pipe for your brand new condo? Probably should have talked to a lawyer and got them to review the condo doc review. If you want to skip steps, there are going to be risks, but if you follow the whole entire process, you should absolutely uncover everything that's hiding for you, and you should be prepared and comfortable to take the process the rest of the way.
Okay. All right, Sherry.
Yeah, so I'm basically what Dave said, like having your ducks in a row beforehand and trying to address concerns before they become issues is important. So when you're working with a good realtor, the thing with realtors is like they're amazing with, crafting terms that you want in your purchase contract. So if it's junk removal, specifically that you're concerned about, put it in the contract. And you can ask the seller to provide proof or photos, 24 hours in advance or 2 days in advance or whatever the condition, is. So there's all kinds of things you can actually put into the contract. That gives you more protection because it's there. The parties agreed to this. So if the sellers don't abide by it or aren't giving you satisfaction, then there's issues with the contract. And as a lawyer, I can start negotiating perhaps holdbacks. So maybe we hold back $500 if the house hasn't been cleaned properly and the sellers agreed to do it. So there's things that I could do. But I mean, once your purchase funds are sent over and your purchase is closed, I mean, there still is a chance that other issues, you could discover issues after the fact. So sometimes there's minor things like you discover the junk hasn't been removed or the carpet hasn't been cleaned. Hopefully you address those in advance, but if you've paid and then you discover these after the fact, I find that the realtors can actually be very helpful because we'll kind of coordinate a plan on behalf of you and try to contact the other party and see if we can get this remedied. You can sometimes encounter major problems. So like if there's damage to the property or concealment of major issues like structural problems if they're concealed, that can be the basis for a legal claim. But again, I still stress, be proactive, get your house inspection, do the walkthrough, all that kind of stuff, because you want to try to prevent these problems before they happen. If something does something major happens after the fact, you can look at legal remedies. So like breach of contract, if there's damages that was caused, the seller would be, obligated to restore property, to the condition it was when the offer was accepted by them. So negotiations can take place between the law offices, between the lawyers. And again, if you're not getting any results, there's other legal action that you can look at. But yeah, I just stress, be proactive, have your team in place in advance, get your home inspection, do the walkthroughs, all that kind of stuff. Realtors are truly worth their weight in gold because they help us so much. And, I'm always thankful to the great realtors that I work with on my files because they're great with kind of making sure the process runs smoothly and, identifying issues in advance. So, yeah.
Hey, fantastic. All right, moving on here. Before we jump into discussion, if you can have only one takeaway for our audience today, what would it be? So Sherry, what do you think?
Yeah. Just the one takeaway, I think it's just be prepared and have that good team to support you during this process. There's a lot that happens, and you can't handle this by yourself. There's so much background work that your various professionals will take care of for you. So have a good team to support you. Have a good realtor on your side to draft your contract. Work with a reputable lender so that your funding requirements can be as smooth as possible, and just be generally available to meet with your lawyer. So it just makes the transaction that much easier. So yeah, have your team in place.
All right, Dave?
Thanks, Sherry. I couldn't agree more. Having the right team is tops, absolutely key. One takeaway, it would be to ask questions. If I had to say, ask your questions. If you don't know what an acronym is or a big word, because I'll pick on mortgage people. Mortgage people like to kind of breeze by. You're like, whoa. What do you mean by this? But how do you know what questions to ask if you don't know? So my first question would be, who would be a realtor that I could trust to guide me through this process? To be like, whoa, hold on. What's this? Ask those questions for you. The good team comes with also having a great mortgage person, great lawyer, great inspector, and all the rest. So if you're climbing Mount Everest, you want a Sherpa that you can rely on. And the same thing with real estate agent. He's going to be the tugboat to guide you through this process. Who can you trust and rely on, not just to get the deal, but to make sure that he's providing a service to you, the clients. If you didn't exist as a client, I wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have a job. And I love my job. So use us, ask the questions. That's what we're here for.
Sure. And just to quickly, just to follow up on both of your points here, when we're talking about assembling a team. So what do you think? For a person to just Google real estate agent, real estate lawyer? I mean, what are some things potential resources they could refer to maybe make sure that, the person they're potentially thinking of hiring, there's someone that they're comfortable with, or someone that they could work with? Do you have any tips there?
Absolutely. And that's a tough question for me because I'm a marketing guy. I will go around and flyer the neighborhood, hand out pens, do all this. When you look at the stats, 85% of people who choose a realtor chose that realtor because their mom did, their cousin did, their nephew did. You trust your buddy Steve. Hey, Steve, what realtor you use? Oh, I did Dave. Dave was great. The whole process. Cool. Get a flyer in the, I can't tell you how many times I've sat at the kitchen table and you see flyers on the wall from another realtor, but here you are and they called you instead. So it's really, word of mouth. Who has your family use? That is comfortable. And again, that hurts for me. When you get a flyer in my mail, your mail, give me a shout. But is he already trusted with a family member, somebody that I already trust? Absolutely. So 85%, you're going to get, the personal reference. And then the rest are kind of like your bus benches. And that's like 5, 4, 3 drops off a complete cliff. So ask your family, again, who you trust, who'd you use, why'd you like them, is he available? Are they available? Sorry.
Great, thanks, David. Sherry, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, you can talk to, family members and friends, like Dave said. I mean, Google searches are available. If you really have no idea, there is a service in Alberta called the Lawyer Referral Service. So you can go in and it's like a search function. If you're looking for particular lawyers, and it can give you recommendations. So yeah, I mean, Google's your friend. You can, check out different law firms and look at the reviews, and again, it's really up to you who you use as a lawyer, but you do want to have somebody, in my opinion, that has experience with real estate and has been, somebody who has that experience will know how to deal with issues when they come up, and they'll make your file go a little bit more smoothly. But yeah, just you can shop around and find somebody you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. Thank you for both of you for those practical tips. We do have some questions here in the Q&A. So I'm going to pull them up and see what we can answer here. All right. This might be a question more for David here. It's a question about whether a person can negotiate fees with their realtor. And what about if they try to sell it themselves? with assistance from a realtor, is there a way to keep costs lower? Like, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. There are questions out there for you. There's a huge thing going on in the States where a lot of the companies got in trouble. The brokers got in trouble because they were not giving their clients, usually the seller's clients, options. They said, this is our fee, take it or leave it. Yes, you can negotiate. You can negotiate with your lawyer. There are other firms out there like your 2% Realty, which used to be Purple Bricks, which used to be Foursquare, which used to be something else. Royal LePage has been around for 100 years in Canada. So there are other options for you. And I'm pretty sure there are certain programs where you can just get a listing fee. Okay, I just want my home on the multiple listing service for everybody to see, but I don't want a realtor to do anything. Perfect. Call com free. They'll set up the key safe, get you photos, and then 1% for that transaction as a whole. More hands off. Now you could get a guy like myself, which I'm a full service realtor, professional photos, all the marketing, everything in the toolbox to get it sold, with the goal of putting as much money in your pocket as possible. And then there's even higher end guys above us that will charge even more because they have more of a marketing package. They'll clean your home, they'll do a pre-inspection, that kind of stuff. So ask around, just like you should shop around for your inspector, your mortgage person, your realtor. Ask around, what can you do for me? Why you deserve it? Do you have booklets? Are you passionate about it? Are you trying to make a sale or are you trying to make a client happy? 100%. And what is your level of degree? Maybe you got some lawyer behind you already and you kind of know what you're doing. And really, to sell your house, you do it all yourself, all the showings, and then all you do need is a lawyer. If you want to be a little more hands-off and hire somebody like me, then we have that option available for you. So ask those questions for sure. Things are negotiable. I can't tell you to say that the fee's the fee because that's not how it works. But there are reasons for those fees to be included. You know, you want the little package, perfect, there's one for you. Medium package, there's one for you. Higher end package, there's one for you.
All right, thank you for that, David. And as we're speaking about inspectors, we do actually have a question about finding reliable inspectors. Like, is there like a official list out there or some sort of website where someone could go to, or is it more kind of word of mouth? What's your take on that?
So anytime, and again, me being the tugboat and having other professional services attached along the whole entire process, inspectors being one of them, anytime that a real estate agent is suggesting a professional, lawyers, mortgage brokers, inspectors, we got to give you a list of at least 3. I can't be like, oh, go with Steve. Steve's my guy. Well, what happens if Steve messes up? Then you're like, hey, Dave, you jerk realtor, you suggested Steve. So here's my top 3. And the reason we have top 3, you know, been in the business for 7 years, you have your trusted guys, you kind of meet all types, right? From somebody you would never work with again to somebody you use all the time. And the way I started off with is that we had people in our office. So our office in Royal LePage, St. Albert, Premier, we have an in-house inspector and an in-house mortgage person. And those are kind of the go-tos because that's who my boss uses. And if she uses those guys, awesome. So you use them, you find your own flavor. Are they good? Are they respectable? There are human errors, but just choose somebody that's reputable, good Google reviews. And if you don't like them, fire them. Hire somebody else. You know, if you're getting the heebie-jeebies or the red flags, it's you as the client, you're in the driver's seat. Don't let these people pull you around. If you're not happy, we can solve that problem before we take the next step.
All right, thank you for those practical tips, David. Next couple of questions, probably more for Sherry, perhaps. See if you could answer these. So this is a question from a attendee from Calgary. I'm not sure if you could comment on that market, but they're finding that well-known builders are asking 15% plus upfront, years ahead for perhaps a new built condo, townhouse build. So is there any legislation protecting buyers that enter like deals like that?
If you're putting down a deposit, there is, but I would have to look it up. I don't have that information in front of me, but yeah, there is. So if you want to reach out after the webinar, I can try to find that information for you. But yeah, I'd have to look it up.
Okay, great. this also has to, let's see here. Perhaps with for properties that are both for sale and rented out. So I guess I'm assuming this is also has to do with rental properties that are on the market. Are there any recourse that a buyer may have if that property there's like potential issue that might occur on that rental property and that needs perhaps fixing prior to or even after the purchase? Like what potential remedies might be available in that type of situation?
Right, so in the situation where you're buying a property that was rented.
Yeah.
So generally, you know, when you're, you know, dealing with your contract to purchase, the property has to be in substantially the same condition and the, you know, all the fixtures in working order as the date that the seller is accepting your offer. So if there's any issues after the fact, again, if you can get that walkthrough before you take possession, that's good, because then I can always step in. And if there's any issues that come up, we can kind of negotiate or, you know, kind of ask for holdbacks for things to get fixed. So it's good to be proactive in that way. But again, if something happens and you move in and, you know, say the furnace isn't working, but it was working when you originally saw it and during inspection or whatever the case is, then yeah, absolutely. Then the seller's not holding up their end of the deal. You know, the property has to be in substantially the same condition as when the offer was accepted. So it can happen, but I mean, the seller's the one who's selling you the property, so it's their obligation contractually to fix whatever the issue is. And so that can hopefully be dealt with in advance with appropriate holdbacks to protect you. And if it can't, and you've already paid your money and you find the issue after the fact, then it would just kind of be a breach of contract and trying to recover damages. So, yeah.
All right. And I think perhaps our last question here, also for Sherry, I think might be directed more towards just legislation about transparency for certain issues. So as far as you're aware, is there any particular legislation that perhaps deals with leaky basements, asbestos, or electrical? Maybe perhaps sounds like more structural issues in a property?
So legislation, you know, when it comes to real estate, I wouldn't say there's legislation per se in those kind of instances, but a seller is obligated to disclose any of those major issues to you. They can't conceal them. If it's something that they know about and it's not easily discoverable by you by, you know, inspecting the property or having a home inspector go through it, they are obligated to disclose those kind of issues. So, you know, if you're purchasing a property and after the fact, it's, you know, there's something in the walls or there's like, you know, something structurally wrong that was hidden, then there would be legal remedies against that. So legislation, not so much, but based on common law principles, yes.
Sure. And just to follow up, like what would be potentially some of those remedies?
Remedies. So again, like if you find like they've actively concealed something and you weren't able to discover it, then it would be, you know, I mean, hopefully you can negotiate some sort of fix with them. Like if you're out of pocket and you're experiencing damages, I mean, the first point is always try to work with them to get compensation for the issue. If you have to go in and fix something, then, you know, hopefully they'll understand and agree and you can settle on something. But if not, then it would be taking them to court. You can do that yourself through the provincial courts, or you can hire a lawyer to assist you, depending on the extent of the damages that you're looking at.
Okay, great, fantastic. It's all really good to know here. So as we're ending, we're nearing the end of our webinar here. Just like to take some time to thank everyone for your questions. And of course, big thank you to David and Sherry for joining us today and sharing their practical insights, especially, you know, all the good tips about assembling, you know, the right professional team for you as you go through the home buying process. And of course, just all excellent information that you've provided today on the home buying process in Alberta. But of course, some of the pitfalls, but also some tips on how to prevent them before they happen in the first place. So that's all great to know. And just as a quick reminder here, please stay connected with us so you can find free legal information and resources on a variety of topics. And of course, you can visit our website, cplea.ca. Also subscribe to our monthly newsletter for our latest updates, including new resources. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, and also YouTube. And last but not least, we do encourage you to fill out our feedback survey when you exit this webinar. And of course, your feedback also helps shape our resource offering moving forward. So thank you again, David and Sherry, and I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks, Sherry.
Yeah, thanks for listening.